So this is a Hornby Class 91 with a Ringfield motor. I have already gone ahead in the past and put in nylon screws on these to isolate it, and then very crudely just kind of drop in power pickup like that. Runs okay, but it's inconsistent. I've cleaned things up as much as I can do. What I've done on some of the Class 43s is put in a CD drive motor instead, just from a CD-ROM on a computer. Or would have been a CD-ROM drive motor on a computer. These have never seen the light of day. They're just manufactured for that. So I'm going to try switching out this Ringfield CAN motor and putting in the CD drive. This also has a Hatton's DCC decoder, and if you followed some of the videos that I've done in the past, I've had problems with those decoders, so I'm not sure exactly whether it's the decoder or if it's the motor, but I do have another Digitrax DH126, which I put in a few different locales. They run a lot smoother. So I'm going to try and go through the process of disassembling this, getting out the CAN motor and trying to fit this. Should be pretty similar to the Class 43s, but I haven't actually seen videos that show doing a Class 91, so that's why I thought I would do this, keep track of things, and we'll see how we go as I get along. This is the CAN motor disassembled, so this whole part just lifts out of the bogie and lift out the gears. You'll reuse those because they will go back in. This then just lifts out, and you can see it's got new brushes and new springs that I had put in. So I've done some amount of trying to service this up. Part now is put this in a vise, try and figure out hitting this with a hammer enough so that it knocks out, because you need to reuse this. The only way to get it out is to take this entire assembly out. Then we should find that this magnetized part of the can then comes out and gives a nice clean area that you can put in that new CD-ROM motor. I'll clean it up first. So take this out of the garage, put it in the vise, start playing with a hammer and see if we can get that knocked out without breaking this whole kind of motor assembly. And yes, I have done that before on one of the Class 43s. This is then successfully removing it. What's actually the easiest way to do it is to take off the wheels, which kind of run through the bottom of the mount there. Take those two off, and then it's actually fairly easy just to put that bottom part in the device. Tap with a hammer on whatever it would be, this far side. Tap, 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 just enough so that the pinion here starts to move away, and it's fairly easy just to pry that off with a screwdriver. And all that ends up is this part is just kind of sitting inside. The whole thing will lift out. It's really not held in at all. It's just kind of pressure holding it in place, and then the pinion. You can get pinion pullers as well, but I found that it's fairly, now that I figured out how to do it, it's fairly easy. Take the wheels off, put that in the vise, tap it with a hammer, and then the pinion pries right off. And now what you're able to do is just drop that straight in there like that. So I'm going to take the opportunity here just to clean this up and make sure, because essentially what we're going to do is put in a dab of super glue just to hold it in place, and then run hot glue around the outside, and that'll make strong glue connections. So I'm just going to clean up the inside here and pros on that far side just to make sure this is nice and clean before we go ahead and put in that CD-ROM motor. So the cleaning there was quick, just some rubbing alcohol. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's some kind of rubbing alcohol. That's just 70%. As you can see, it does take off quite a bit of dirt. It's just kind of hanging up. And so now we can go ahead and put a little bit of glue on here. And what you're going to need to be really careful with so you don't get any of the glue anywhere the holes where the motor that could get inside the motor assembly, and certainly nowhere near here where the pinion's going to attach to. And all I want you to do is have a little bit of glue that's going to bond the face of the motor into the back of the motor mount here, just enough to hold it in place so that we can then put a dab of hot glue all the way around the outside. So go ahead and try that. What you try and do when you're doing this as well is try and make sure that we keep this as center as possible. So you can see in the middle there, I'll flip it over, this little part here, the gold part in the middle, you Again, you want to keep glue as far away from there as you can, but you need to make sure that it comes through perfectly centered, as square as you can do, because essentially this is where the pinion attaches to, and is then going to drive those gear wheels. So you need to make this as square in the center as you can do when you try and glue it. So this is now that motor glued in place with the hot glue gun. It's a dab of super glue, which you can just about see on some of the edges there. That was holding that in place just enough so that you can get hot glue in. Not super duper clean and neat and tidy, but all you're trying to do is squirt in enough of the hot glue that it fills down the side of the motor mount. This probably is about 3 or 4 millimeters clearance maybe, and then enough just that'll hold it in place. That's pretty much it. Now the fun part comes with trying to get the pinion back on top, because what we'll find is originally there was this little piece that was sitting through the hole onto the actual can motor, and that was enough to hold it in place when the pinion attaches. If you put the pinion on top now, it's ever so slightly too big and it moves around. So a trick that I found from videos of people doing the Class 43s and what I've done in the past is you put cut a little bit of heat shrink, glue that, melt that on, and then you glue the pinion on top, and then that's just enough to be able to hold in place while still keep it nice and attached solid. So go ahead and do that, and then we should be pretty much ready to start reassembling it, and then we can start actually attaching this back up to the DCC chip. There is the pinion now attached. It's kind of hard trying to do this with the tripod and still keep everything visible, but essentially all you do is cut a very small piece of heat shrink tubing, add a very small dab of glue on the top, and spread it around with a cocktail stick or small little screwdriver. Put the heat shrink over the top, use a soldering iron to then heat that up, trim it down, and then you can push the pinion over on top. And it is very tightly in place. It's not coming off. And then a little dab of glue on top as well, just to hold it. So now that that's all done, we'll now start to put the wheels back on. I've taken off. I've also cleaned up the wheels a little bit as well. Just roughed those with very high grit sandpaper just to clean those up. And then dab over the lubricant as we put the gearing back on, and then this should be pretty much ready for a test run. That's all the motor assembly back in place, wheels back on, and using the trusty back-to-back gauge to make sure that those wheels are then engaged, because after all of this, the last thing that you would want is for those wheels not to be engaged and still have problems. Then use just a little bit of a dab of this liquid bearing on each of the little posts where the gears come up. Slot the gears on top, and then replace this with one that I had before. Remember before I had the power kind of very badly soldered on like that. It's kind of a pain trying to solder on there. So I had a spare one of these from an old motor, so put that in place. So that should now be all just about ready to go. Things rotating around pretty freely. No real problems there. So I'm going to put this back onto the actual bogie assembly and get it back inside the chassis body itself, and then probably go ahead and start to clean up the contacts on these two wheels so they can then pull in the power and wire in the DCC decoder. DCC chip wired in. I did end up putting on a new power cable off the chassis of the motor here for the power pickup, rather than trying to do it over here. There were two holes that would run through on either side. They were now exposed. You can see a little bit better there. So I could wrap around, get a good bunch of flux in there, and then solder on that. Hopefully it's going to be a little bit cleaner of a joint, and the other one just drops over here, kind of like it had been before. And then the two power positive and negative coming off that CD-ROM motor into our DCC chip. So hopefully this is all now done. I had also gone ahead and taken the wheels off here, cleaned those up, also then cleaned up lower part of the bogie. I'm not entirely sure what this part's called, where the power comes in. Again, clean that up. Very high grit sandpaper, like 1600 grit sandpaper, just to clean it up. This should now be ready to go. Moment of truth is to go and take it over onto the layout, drop it on, and see if this actually works. Hopefully it does, and hopefully it's a whole lot smoother now with that CD-ROM motor and with that new DCC chip in it. Yeah, so come on to the layout. Moment of truth here is going to be to see if this actually does work. What I had done before I actually put the DCC chip in is pull out the multimeter and just make sure that I had my power connections correct, just to make sure that I wasn't going to have any shorting problems coming off the motor block. There really shouldn't have been, because again, if we think back to how we originally had it, there was another part of the motor block here, and this is where the CAN motor then connected into, and so part of the problem that you have to try and do is isolate the motor with those nylon screws, because essentially all of this motor block here is then where the power comes from off the left rail. This rear part is then picking up the right rail. With the CAN motor gone completely, and all it's doing is then picking up the power directly into the CD-ROM motor, it really shouldn't matter that this entire motor block is electrified, because there's nothing that can happen with this motor. This is where the power is coming into now. We're not concerned about any power on this motor block, but I just wanted to make sure, so I put the multimeter on, and I was doing okay. So then I put the DCC chip into the socket, and we'll see how it goes. So it's not perfect. I probably still need to do a little bit of adjustment on the gears, but they do at least move around. You see a little bit of noise. It sounds like the gears are just a little bit tight, maybe. I'm not sure if I maybe just went a little bit over the top with the gauging. It made it just a little bit too tight, but it's certainly an awful lot smoother, an awful lot quieter than it had been with that Ringfield motor. So now we'll go ahead and put the actual body back on itself, and we'll see how this looks once it's got its body back on and ready to roll. This is now with the body back on top, and it is smoothing up a little bit as I'm kind of rolling it backwards and forwards. I can't run it all around the layout at the moment, unfortunately. I am trying to do a little bit of ballasting. I'm just kind of procrastinating here by deciding that I want to try and get this one done. But I do basically have the layout shut down here. I've got ballast down. It's not glued yet, but I've got the point works all covered up, and I don't want to kind of go ahead and lift that. So all the trains are parked over here. So what I'm probably going to do is just run it backwards and forwards a little bit, but it does seem like you know, the gears are opening up just a little bit, and so when you're watching it, it is moving pretty smoothly, and I am pretty happy to see this going backwards and forwards like this. Even though it's not perfect, it's an awful lot better than it has been. I got this model well over a year ago, and just never really got around to getting this running properly. You know, I tried a couple of different ways to isolate the motor with those nylon screws. I then replaced brushes and springs and cleaned and serviced the motor a couple of times, and you just never get it really running reliably. So I do actually have a rake of Mark IV coaches. If you look at the HST and Swallow, you know, if you've seen any of the videos of trains running, they are actually Mark IV coaches, even though they're connected into the Class 43. Reason being was that I just didn't get this Class 91 going all that smoothly enough. When I was back in England, I did get a whole bunch of replacement wheels for those Mark IV coaches. Again, one of the reasons why I never really put a lot of time into getting this Class 91 going is that I was having a lot of derailment problems with those Mark IV coaches. And really, I think it was just coming down to the gauging was just wrong, back-to-back gauging was wrong. With them being plastic wheels, you can't adjust them either, so that was kind of a pain. So I've got replacement wheels to go on all of those 6 Mark IV coaches. That gives me a 6+2 rack. So I've got, it's kind of hard to tell with the HST in blue, BR blue, but I've got 2 first class, I've then got the buffet coach, and then I've got 3 seconds. So looking forward to getting this hooked up. Now that this is running pretty smoothly, go ahead and put the wheels on that and we'll run. But this is how you can go ahead and you know, convert a Class 91, one of the older Hornby Class 91s from Ringfield motor into the CD-ROM motor. Very same process, very similar process to if you've done a class 43 or other videos that are out there on the class 43. Same process, and also then putting in a new DCC decoder. Like I've mentioned before, Haddon's decoders I haven't had an awful lot of success with. Those Digitrax DH126s I have, and using Digitrax mainly just because in the US they're pretty common ones that I can easily pick up. And some people have said before, do I have to use Digitrax decoders from using Digitrax system and vice versa? No, this is an NCE power cab that runs my system. I have no problem in using those Digitrax decoders. In fact, most of my N-scale stuff runs off the NCE power cab as well, and all of those decoders, in fact, Digitrax. So there you go. If you got problems with those older Hornby 91, Class 91, same as the older Hornby and Lima Class 43s with those Ringfield motors, the CD-ROM switches are pretty easy to do. I think it's like $3, a couple of pounds to get each of those motors. Not that hard once you've done the first one. That real hard part is getting the pinion off the motor. Getting that out safely without damaging the motor housing. Once you've done one, it's actually really easy. So I've got probably one more of my Class 43s, I think, that I will do that motor conversion on, and that's pretty much it. All of these should be running pretty smoothly now. So hopefully this helps. Let me know if you run into any problems or if this was useful, and please do subscribe and follow along so you can see the rest of what's going on here in Newcastle Central. If this is the first video that you're seeing, it's a double O gauge of Newcastle Central, set loosely in the late 80s to early 90s, so ignore the mallard that's in there. I just really like it. This is kind of where we're at. So we've got a switch panel in place that's covering 23-point motors to the north and south of the station. All the platforms you can see are there in place. There is some line side detailing that's already in there, and then like I had mentioned, I am starting work on ballasting some signal gantries. I've got another couple of signal gantries, and I've got the first of some of the signaling ready to go in and testing. So please do subscribe and follow along so you can see what else is going on here in Newcastle Central, and all the best if you do go ahead with one of these Class 91 CD-ROM drive motor conversions. Thanks for watching. Bye.